Do you ever have those days where you're just feeling kind of down in the dumps? You're just feeling blue and you just don't know how to get out of it, right? I was having a couple of those days, and sometimes you just don't know what's going on, and you pray and you say, Lord, help me out and get me to the right place and help me have a little bit more positive attitude, right? That the world isn't all doom and gloom. And a lot of times when I do that, I look to the Psalms, and I look for these Psalms of hope, these Psalms of prayer to kind of ease my burden a little bit and let me know that God's still there and He's still in control. And the other day when I was going through that, I flipped to a Psalm. It was Psalm 88. Pretty sure I've never read this Psalm in my life. I'm almost positive of it. And I read through it, and I'm going to read you a portion of that Psalm. I want you to hear what it says. It says, starting at verse 9 of Psalm 88, I call to you, O Lord, every day. I spread out my hands to you. Do you show your wonders to the dead? Do those who are dead rise up and praise you? Is your love declared in the grave, your faithfulness in destruction? Are your wonders known in the place of darkness, or your righteous deeds in the land of oblivion? But I cry to you for help, O Lord. In the morning my prayer comes before you. Why, O Lord, do you reject me and hide your face from me? From my youth I have been afflicted and close to death. I have suffered your terrors and I am in despair. Your wrath has swept over me. Your terrors have destroyed me. All day long they surround me like a flood. They have completely engulfed me. You've taken my companions and loved ones from me. The darkness is my closest friend. You're kind of waiting for me to keep going, to keep reading the rest of that, right? Because this psalm doesn't give us that glimmer of hope that I was hoping for the day that I was looking for one. And I started reading through it, and I got to the end, and I was like, Lord, I'm not finding hope in that. But I started to think about it nonetheless, right? I started to consider what's going on, because we all have days like this, right? Where we feel like we're lost and we're alone. And depression will do that, whether that's seasonal depression, whether that's times in our life where we're depressed and feeling lonely and blue. As humans, we all feel this way at some point in time or another. And when we start feeling depressed, right, we start to feel listless. We feel tired. We don't want to talk to other people. We kind of want to shut the door to our house, and we want to kind of hide and not go out of there, right? And we start to feel sad, and we feel fairly worthless and unattractive, and we feel helpless, and like nobody can understand our problem, that we're literally on our own. I don't know anybody who hasn't ever felt that way. And as Christians sometimes, right, we're told that, man, you should not feel that way as a Christian, that if you are saved by God and that you have the hope of Jesus and you're actually a good Christian and you're following God's word and you're doing what He's told you to do, that you must be doing something wrong. Right? Job's friends did the same exact thing, didn't they? When everything bad happened to Job and God let the devil kind of have his way with him there for a while, and Job was at his wit's end, his friend showed up, and they basically started out by saying, well, you must have done something wrong. But that's just not true, right? Depression's a real thing. It's a real medical issue that we all need to be aware of and that we shouldn't be afraid of, right? It doesn't make us a bad Christian to be depressed from time to time. It doesn't make us a bad Christian to have emotions and feelings. But we have to find hope in that, right? And so I was actually thankful for this psalm after I got done reading it, and I prayed about it and I thought about it. I have somebody that is near and dear to me that has gone through 2 really tough deaths in their life in the last couple weeks, and man, that's got to be tough, and they got to be feeling the weight and the burden of losing those around them that they love, and it's got to make them feel bad. And even in those times, it doesn't make us a bad Christian. It doesn't mean that we love God any less. In fact, if we look through our scriptures and we pay attention to our scriptures and the people and the characters of those people, we'll see that that's a problem for others in the Bible. Think about King David, right? King David, that dude was extremes, right? He was up and down and all over the place. Sometimes he's joyously praising God and dancing through the streets as the Ark of the Covenant is being brought into Jerusalem. He's praising God and he's happy and he's at the highest of highs. Right? He's so excited. He's so joyful. And then other times we read Psalms and we read him where he's lying in bed. And he feels worthless. And he says, God, why don't you just take me? Why don't you just end the suffering that I go through? Right? These are emotions that we deal with. And there's ups and downs to each one of those. And we need to recognize that in ourselves and in the others that we love, right? Because when we go through depression and we have these times and we don't have anybody to talk to about it and we can't get to the root cause of it, it leads to bad places, right? It leads to alcoholism. It leads to drug addiction. It leads to making bad choices. And in the worst case scenarios, it leads to people committing suicide. Now, I'm not saying I have all the answers to this, right? I'm not a medical professional, but as a church, it's kind of incumbent upon us to be there for other people, right? We're supposed to be there for the other people in our church, in our family, our friends, those who love us, and those who don't love us so much too, that we're supposed to be there to support them, to love them. Romans 12 says this, chapter 12, verse 9, love must be sincere, hate what is evil, cling to what is good. Be devoted to one another in brotherly love, honor one another above yourselves. Never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor serving the Lord. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. Share with God's people who are in need. Practice hospitality. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice, and mourn with those who mourn. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be proud, but be willing to associate with people of low position. Do not be conceited. We can see very clearly in Paul's writing in Romans that I really especially want to look at verse 14 where it says, bless those who persecute you. Share joy. Be joyful with those who are in joy, but at the same time, to mourn with those that are in mourning. Right? Paul's call for us as a church, Paul's call for us as people that love God is to be there for others when they need it. When they need us. When they give you a phone call and they need your help, they need someone to talk to. We can't turn our backs to those that need us, even if that is something that's all based on feelings, like my feelings of gloom and doom and darkness is my only friend. In fact, when I first read that psalm, I thought to myself, man, did they take those lyrics out of a Simon Garfunkel song and throw them right in the middle of the Bible? Because it doesn't real fit, right? It doesn't offer a whole lot of hope. But if we love other people, right, if we don't have that selflessness, if we don't have that selfishness that we're born with, if we truly start to love those around us, this should be easy, right? This should be an easy one for us to love those that are around us that need us, to take care of others, to be there when others need us. Sometimes we get so caught up in our own thing and we get so caught up in wanting to be right and wanting to be logical and wanting to be intellectual and wanting to do those things that we can't stop and just hear somebody's feelings and help them. But that's what we're supposed to do, right? I can't always understand God's purpose in pain. I can't always understand God's purpose in suffering. I don't understand why I feel blue sometimes. but I do. Does that make God any less? No, it does not. Right? We see in the psalm that it says, I continue to cry out to you, O Lord. Right? This writer of the psalm is not giving up hope in God. He's not giving up hope that God's going to take care of him. He continues to seek him out. He continues to look for answers from him. He continues to say, God, why? I'm here for you. I've gone through what I need to go through, Lord. Please rescue me from this. And that's hope in and of itself. That God is still there and God is still listening and God is still waiting. It's hard for us to know where other people are if we don't get to know them. If we don't start having personal relationships with each other, it's hard for us to get to know somebody and to know if they need more help than just talking with us. Depression is a real disease. Sometimes it takes a medical expert, someone who's trained to help. Sometimes it takes prescriptions to help out with that thing. And it's not a shame, right? We should never be ashamed to feel bad about who we are or to have a time of gloom and doom in our lives. In fact, I want to tell you a story to kind of bring us into perspective. There was 2015, it was going into the fall, and the harvest work was going on, and I'd been a service manager at this point in time for 15 years of my life, and I was working at John Deere as a service manager, and every day when I'd show up to work, I'd just have this massive amount of anxiety, worried about how that day is going to get done, how are we going to get the things that need to be done, hoping that we didn't get a whole bunch of other breakdowns and more phone calls because we're stretched thin, and it's my job to make sure that those things get done. And every morning as I was driving to work and I was praying, as soon as I walked in that door, the anxiety level just cranked up to here, right? I was worried about what was going to get on. And pretty soon when I'd get to work, shortly after starting work in the mornings, I'd start getting these chest pains that would start here and they'd shoot up through my arm. And I tried to ignore it, and pretty soon it got to the point where I had to look at the guy that sits to my left. I called him my left-hand man. He was my right-hand man, but he was to my left. And I looked at him and I said, I think something's wrong. He said, what's going on? And I told him, and he said, you need to get to the doctor right now. Right, because I was having these physical signs of heart attack. And so I left and I went to the doctor, and they said, hey, we need to get you down for some tests. Everything sounds okay, but we need to get you down to those tests. And anybody who's ever been through those battery of tests on your heart, I went down there a few days later and I started having the tests that needed to be done. And I was in very good physical condition at the time. And I got done and went home and waited for the results. And they said, physically, you're great. There's nothing wrong. Your heart's fine. Everything's great. I said, okay. Planned on going back to work the next morning. I drove it over to Grafton, and as I was getting there, as I started to pull in the parking lot, that feeling of anxiety and being overwhelmed and just nervous came back, and that pain that came through my chest came back again, and I just kept driving, and I drove, and I went out to this place out in the country that's owned by my wife's family, and we call it Coyotes Point, and it's a place of peace for me. And I started praying. I said, God, what's going on? I can't go to work. I don't know what to do. I'm letting everybody down. I'm letting my family down by not being there. I'm letting my people down by not being there to run my shop. I'm letting my customers down by not being there to make sure that things are getting done and that things are getting built out. And I'm letting my company down and my bosses down. And God, I don't know what to do because I shouldn't feel this way. In that moment, I was crying out to God, but I didn't get an answer. I just didn't get an answer right away. And I went home and I didn't tell my wife what was going on, that I didn't go to work, and I didn't go to work that whole week. And I called my doctor again and I went in to see her, and when I went in to see her, she said, everything's great. And she said, how are you feeling? I said, I still feel the same. When I try and show up for work, my anxiety is so high that I just can't go in. I'm still getting these physical pains. And for the next hour, she just sat and talked with me. Right? She talked with me about what was going on because as a medical professional, she understood that this was a mental thing. This wasn't a physical, it was a mental thing. And she relayed to me an instance of where she went through similar things, and I know that she's a Christian woman, and I know that she loves God very deeply. And she said, Jesse, it's okay. You're just a man. You're going to have these feelings. It doesn't mean you don't love God. It doesn't mean that your salvation's not intact. But it does mean you're going through an incredible amount of stress, and you need to deal with that. And that helped. She did give me a prescription. I took the prescription for about 3 days, and I just didn't like what it did to my mind. I'm not telling anybody that they should not take prescription drugs if your doctor gives them to them. Please don't take that out of context. It just wasn't for me. What I needed is somebody outside of my house, right? Not my wife, not my children, not my friends and family. I needed somebody as a professional to tell me, it's okay. This isn't the end of the world. You're just normal. And these things are going to happen. Sometimes as men especially, we try and hide from these things. We don't want to tell anybody when we're hurting, when we're depressed, when we're kind of lost. We don't want to let people know that. But I'm here to tell you, church, that the beginning of healing is to let somebody know that you're hurt. Right? If I went and snapped my arm in half, I wouldn't look at it and go, well, nothing to see here. I guess I'll just cover it up and not let anybody know that I broke my arm. It'll heal eventually. No, I'd go to the doctor and I'd see him. Mental health is a real issue, folks. And as a church, the first step is letting people know it's okay. The second thing is letting them know we're here for you. We're here to help you. We're here to listen. We're here to let you know and to pray with you and to cry out to God on your behalf and say, Lord, hear me. I'm suffering. Bring me hope. Bring me peace. And then we continue to help each other. And then we encourage people that sometimes the best thing to do is to go see people that God has trained up to deal with those issues. I know this has been a little bit of a different sermon today, but it's something that I think is really important that we talk about, that human emotions are real. And we shouldn't sweep them under the rug because somebody has told us that we're not good Christians for it. I hope this gives you some hope. I hope it gives you encouragement to take care of yourself and to let those that love you, those that care about you, let them help. It'll do you a world of good. Thank you for watching today. God bless. Have a wonderful, wonderful time. Well, I guess it's not shutting off, so I'm going to go click the button.